Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. And today's episode, I'm going to be talking with Micheal Galarnyk. And I think I got that right this time.
Totally did.
Sweet. And he caught my attention because on a recent LinkedIn post, he shared one of his blog posts that goes like really in depth into how he thinks about and works through analytics portfolios. Although he's a little bit heavier on the, I guess, data science side, would you say?
Yeah, I would say so.
So, I mean, full disclosure, I think you guys have probably already heard this by now. I don't code. I don't do any of that. But where I think our overlap is the Tableau Public interface and how that's an excellent way for you to build out a portfolio that you can show to your future hiring manager. So, Micheal, I'll just kind of let you introduce yourself. Sounds like you've got a lot going on.
I probably have too much going on. So I'm Micheal Galarnyk. I currently am creating a course for Stanford Continuing Studies on machine learning with Python. I have a data analytics course for UCSD Extension, and that's data analytics using Python. I have a LinkedIn learning course, as does our host.
Madecraft, yeah.
Yeah, we could totally talk about that too. And I write a lot of blogs. A lot of blogs.
Not only are you writing a lot, but you're also getting a lot of, you said you got what,
200,000 views plus per month easily. Wow. Yeah.
So you're making some real waves though. That's really impressive.
Yeah. Am I making money off it? No, but it's a lot of fun.
Soon.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Cool. Well, let's just jump right in. Sorry, I'm totally stealing Philip DeFranco's thing into the blog post walkthrough. So what was the title of the blog post and what was your intentions on writing it?
So the title is How to Build a Data Science Portfolio. And my overall intention of writing like this particular blog post is because I've written so many blog posts, people reach out to me, I'd say at least 10 to 15 per day at the time, at least. Now it's a lot more. About like, oh, how do I get a job? Or give me a referral? Or, I can't find a job. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, And so I've read so many blog posts because I write blog posts and so many, talks on people's like resumes and that sort of stuff. So I compiled a bunch of sources where hiring managers talk about, here's what we're looking for in a candidate, for data science roles, and here's what we're looking for analytics roles. So rather than just me saying, oh, you need to do this to get a job, it's hiring managers saying, you need to do this versus just me saying this, because who am I, right? But if you're a manager at Quora, if you're a manager, at Stack Overflow or big companies, Google, etc., if they say something, you're more likely to listen than just me,
Right. So what do they say?
Oh, lots of things. So the gist of this, as you say in your podcast all the time, the ability to show employers that you can do something instead of just telling them something is really important, because there's been so many stories in the blog post I cover, someone getting a job because they had a really good Stack Overflow answer, like legit, someone reached out over Stack Overflow and was like, hey, do you want to be hired? And, got an interview, got a job. I should also note this happens for me a lot, where people read my blog and are like, hey, are you looking for a job? And I'm at the point where I can only take so many jobs, I'm only one person, so I want to share the wealth, so to speak. And then, from David Robinson, he was the chief data scientist at DataCamp. He was the one that got a job at Stack Overflow originally. And his advice for people is the more public work you do, the higher chance of a freak accident, like someone reading a Stack Overflow answer,
right,
or, reading a blog, or
it's called hustle luck, actually.
Yeah, it's hustle luck, right?
Yeah. And I was listening to Naval Ravikant. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
So did you listen to his podcast on I Will Teach You to Be Rich, or I Will Teach You How to Be Rich?
No.
So listen to it. It's just chock full of insights. But he talks about there are three kinds of luck. There's blind luck, which it just happens to you randomly. There's hustle luck, and that's where the old adage is, the more I get out there, the luckier I get. And then there's a third kind of luck, which is just if you are a worldwide leader in your space, then there are opportunities, like just being established essentially.
Mhm.
So you're hitting on that second type of luck, which is hustle luck, which is really interesting. And
Mhm.
that's not even where I was going in my mind. I was thinking about this just in terms of
Mhm.
you and I are in an interview and here's my work. But you're right.
Mhm.
You're actually marketing yourself when you have a portfolio.
Yeah, it's a great way to market yourself. Uh, it might work too successfully. It takes time to build, just in general.
Right.
Like, you're not going to publish a blog and immediately, you get 20 people offering you a job. It's more of the slow build to the point where you're getting, chased down, people asking you, hey, do you want to work for me? Or, hey, can you interview for this job? And I'm at the point where, I have too many people asking me like, hey, are you interested in a job? Or are you interested in, moving here? Are you interested in doing this remote job? Or, you know, all this sort of stuff, because my portfolio is just so far out there.
So
Uh,
how long have you been actively working on so you call it a blog, but your blog is kind of also functioning as a portfolio at this point too, right?
it definitely is. So I've been doing YouTube on and off for a couple of years, but I don't really post a lot of videos. You can check my YouTube channel, like Micheal Galarnyk, which is my name, right?
Shameless plug.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, if I wanted like views, I would actually, put ads on it. Uh, but it's been about 3, 4 years, and I post, every couple months.
Mhm.
So I'm not that consistent, but I have like 7,500 followers or so, or subscribers. My blog, gets way more views just in general, like uh, 8,000 a day or more, typically.
Was there like an inflection point or like a critical mass point where things just all of a sudden you
Blast
hit
off.
and then just blasted off?
You know, I would say I've been doing the blog for about 4 years, and it kind of, lasted off, 2.5 years ago, I'd say.
So
And
about a year and a half in.
yeah, and the one thing people, wonder is like, oh, you must be posting every week or, every, month. For me, it can be like every couple months or every 6 months sometimes.
Wow.
It's just about posting good quality content that people view. So some of my blog posts, they go through ebbs and flows, of course, but some of them are, 1,000 views a day. And that's consistent. That's not, a one-time thing. That's, day over day, 365. Post good stuff, it'll stay there forever. And that's
Right.
that's only including the medium aspect. That's not including, people republishing a blog on a different website. Uh, there's tons of those, or blogs being translated. So I have no idea how many views in total that means.
Yeah, well that's really cool. You're getting way more traffic than I am. I'm impressed, frankly, with how much traction you're getting.
It's
Um,
the time aspect. You've just started it effectively, right?
well, no. I've been blogging. I've been vlogging on YouTube for about a year and a half now.
Hmm.
So what I did was I actually pivoted. My YouTube channel used to be my name, and I just
Hmm.
changed it to How to Get an Analytics Job.
Hmm.
That being said, like this is the first time I've created a content calendar and I've actually executed on it.
Hmm.
Like me and a business partner sat down probably 3 years ago and
Hmm.
we mapped out, 2019, this is
Hmm.
how we're going to approach it. And we're going to have social media posts. And we just got busy and
Hmm.
it didn't happen. And, I actually, what I did for this podcast, which I don't, maybe I'm pulling
Hmm.
back the curtain here and I shouldn't reveal this, but we front loaded. So I recorded about 15 podcast episodes before we even launched.
Hmm.
So now I can stream them out. And then we're also finding other ways of like kind of chopping the content up. So, well, yeah, the feedback's important. So one of the early feedback we got on this podcast was that people want to see people talking.
Hmm.
I don't know why that is, why that like resonates. And I'm even seeing it in the thumbnails.
Yeah.
Like, we were talking off air before, we hit record, but my conversion rate from my thumbnails where it's just my face and then text right here versus the standard like thumbnail template we were using was here's the logo, here's the episode number, here's the guest, and then here's our pictures, and that was
Mhm.
divided into 4 squares as well.
Yeah.
And the conversion rate on that is like 1/3 of the one where it's like my face is here and then there's stuff. So, I mean, I guess these are things you just kind of learn. Because my thing is, how can I consistently deliver on my brand message, which is 3 YouTube videos a week and 1 podcast?
Oh, well, that's a lot. That's
It
pretty
is, right? But
like
I'm finding ways of like chunking it up or like I guess scaling it in that. So like this, for example, I can pull out where you were talking about the difference between, well, actually haven't asked this question yet, which is coming up. What's the difference between a data analytics and a data science profile or portfolio?
Do you want me to answer?
Actually, yes. That is
Sure.
a perfect segue.
So it really depends on the job description, right?
Okay.
You can call it job analytics, you can call it data science, but it's all about the keywords in the job description, right? So people are like, oh, I want a data science job or I want an analytics job. Sometimes Google Tableau jobs,
Right.
and that really could be the same. It could be the same thing as a data science job, because the way people recruit is they may want to call something data analyst or data scientist, right? So that's the one big thing I give people advice on. They're like, oh, I want a data science job. I can't find any. I'm like, did you Google Python? Did you Google Tableau or Power BI? Or, I think people are very silly sometimes. Like, I just looked at these jobs,
Right. So the advice you're giving is reverse engineer the job that you want, and then that will determine what platform you build out your portfolio on.
Yeah, of course. So, if you do a lot of like Power BI or Tableau, Google that. And then, for the portfolio, if you're Googling specifically Tableau, you better have a Tableau Public, or it helps, or a certification, or, just give me some proof, anything, These
Right.
hiring managers and all these, posts are like, please just show us something, anything, like, please, and
yeah, that's interesting because people are, like you were saying, people are answering questions on Stack Overflow and then getting job offers.
Yeah.
The same thing's happening with Tableau Public, which is kind of my world. So I've been I actually just stepped down from this position, but I was the Tableau user group in Greensboro for the past 2 years. So
Yeah.
I've kind of been boots on the ground helping people learn about Tableau and then kind of being somewhat of a brand ambassador, just like getting people to the groups and excited about Tableau, and then also, teaching some in-person classes, like some Tableau 101 stuff. Which, I mean, that segues into the next question I wanted to talk about, is kind of like a deeper dive into Tableau Public. So what do you think of what do you think is the value of Tableau Public?
Well, a lot of people, say they can do something, but it's nice to have public proof. So in my blog post, and I'm not trying to just, give a shout out or anything.
Oh, no. Plug yourself away.
I plugged 2 people, Aricia Stus, because, I know her, from being former coworkers. So she published like, I don't know, 7, 8 dashboards, a couple of years ago. And then she used those in interviews, like, oh, here's what I can do, and that helped a lot,
Yeah, actually, so I don't think we haven't released any of this content yet, but we found a guy here in Greensboro who had just gotten laid off from his marketing job. He actually lives in my apartment complex. We just ran into him randomly at a dinner party, but I was telling him that, I went to UNCG to get my master's in analytics, or my MBA with a concentration in analytics. And he was like, oh man, I was thinking about going through that same program. And I was like, man, we were looking for someone just like you, someone who is interested in data and wants to get that first analytics job. I was like, we can completely bypass the 2 years, the $24,000, which UNCG's MBA is super cheap. It was $24,000 for 2 years.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's like hardly anything. But you can bypass those 2 years of, opportunity costs. I can help you build out a Tableau Public page and help you get a job. Within, I think, 2 weeks, he had already accepted his offer. So,
yeah. Proof is a big thing, right? It's huge.
Yeah, he what he did was he was like a huge sports fanatic, which I don't know anything about sports ball or any of that. And he took all of his fantasy football data and turned it into a visualization. So that then he showed up in the interview and kind of talked through why specific metrics within fantasy football are important, and that's how it drives his decision. which that's a really not a far cry at all from, you know, I don't know anything about sports, like how fast he can run versus how many touchdowns he had. These are the two metrics of like, yes, I should pick him. I mean, flip that, you know, well, in terms of sales, like days to close and deal size, these are the two most important metrics. These are the accounts that we should go after.
Yeah. It's a big thing, right?
Right.
Ease the burden of the interview, right? Because the worst thing for, you know, hiring someone is a sunk cost or, you know, a bad hire. You know, it's very expensive. So just show someone you're not going to be a bad hire and they might like you a lot more.
Right. Well, it's just powerful because it gives you something concrete to root the conversation on. Because I think a lot of interviewers, actually, I don't think I know this, they are very interested in how you go about getting your results or how you think about things. And having a dashboard of, well, you know, here's sales data. Here's why I chose these as the KPIs that run along the top, because this is what's been important in the past organizations I've been in, or in this specific use case, this is what they're concerned about.
Yeah, that's huge, right?
Right. It gives them like a window into your thinking.
Yeah, when I was hiring like interns and people that had things online, so much easier, just so much easier to talk to them and do things, you know. We had an intern a couple of years ago that, you know, had a pretty filled out GitHub, and for like data science jobs, I guess analytics jobs, if they, you know, need Python, she had stuff on her GitHub. She had, you know, all sorts of writing she's done about, you know, programming and all this other stuff. And I'm like, wow, this person, you know, and this person was a high schooler. And so
Wow.
we picked the high schooler over like people that, you know, were residents in med school, because I work at like a biotech place.
That's
Because
impressive.
she had actual proof she could do something. And we just co-authored a paper with her, actually.
Well,
But yeah.
thanks for sharing that. That was such a brilliant story to share. That's just like, right.
Yeah. And, you know, people were like, why are you hiring this, you know, high schooler, or bringing this high schooler into, you know, whatever. But, you know, proof really does help, you know, because I need someone that can program. I need someone that can actually do something. I don't, you know, it was probably just also just the fit, you know, because it's hard to get programmers toward, you know, a research institution that's biotech. But, you know, best idea we've had, you know.
Yeah, that brings up kind of an interesting point. I was so I'm working with the former CFO of Wrangler Jeans. Have you heard of Wrangler?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
They're wearing something
now. So I'm planning on making some content around like how to foster a mentor relationship. And so he reached out to me to partner on some projects, and unfortunately the projects fell through. But I was very much concerned with how can I grow this foster this relationship and get to know him better and see how he thinks. So I sit on the board of directors for a nonprofit, and he was interested in getting, you know, more into that space. So I actually asked if he would be interested in helping me, you know, create the budget, and then we can build out some visualizations to help get funding. But all that is to say, that was a bit of a tangent. I was asking him about, well, yeah, I've interviewed Oz, the last guy that I interviewed on this podcast. He went to Harvard. And I was like, man, I was like really kind of nervous because I was getting some imposter syndrome. But I mean, talking to him, I feel like I'm kind of like we're kind of on an equal footing, and even I have some insights that can help him run his business better. And Nathan said, yeah, a lot of these people who have these name brand degrees, they are very book smart, but they don't have that like street smart entrepreneurial kind of like that hustle mindset. And there's trade-offs to both of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, you know, the Harvard, you know, credential is, you know, in some ways is validation that you can do something, right? Because to get into Harvard, you have to be, you know, XYZ, right? In theory, at least. But, you know, the way to, you know, bridge a lot of gaps, and, you know, is to have something that you can show people, you know. A Harvard degree is something you can theoretically show people. But, you know, having a portfolio is something that, you know, you can show people, you know, all the time. People are looking at our portfolios right now as we're speaking on a podcast, right? Because we have so much content out there, you know.
I have a thought, and I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this. So getting a university degree,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like, oh, you're a good boy. You can listen. You can
Mm-hmm.
you can you can go in and take this test, and you can read this book, and you can get over the
Mm-hmm.
hurdles we throw at you. But that's so it that does not map into the real world. In fact, I
Not
think
usually.
yeah, in fact, I think that actually hinders a lot of people and
Yeah.
discourages them from going to entrepreneurship. And I guess what I'm relating back to is having a degree means that yeah, you can you can be told what to do and you can pretty much do it. But having a portfolio, on the other hand, that instead of kind of being in that receiving like you're a good subordinate,
Mm-hmm.
shows that you're proactive. So you're forward
Mm-hmm.
looking. You're actually going out into the environment and finding opportunities and solving problems proactively.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, totally. Uh, you know, like anything, it's all a combination of, everything. I think part of the problem is people are like, oh, I got a degree, that should be enough. And, you know, the more you do, the more you hustle, the better your
Hmm.
results will be, and it just shows you can go outside the box, you work hard, It's definitely very, very important to have a presence. And
Right. Because yeah, I think universities, and it's funny, I've had a very strong it's funny that I have a master's degree, but
mhm,
I'm kind of biased against the academy and like the world of academia.
mhm,
And that, yeah, you're right. I feel like it's in this square box,
mhm,
and they teach you there is value. And I was interviewing this guy named George Mount, who creates analytics boot camps. And he
mhm,
was talking about like the difference between a boot camp and university. Universities are kind of like tank liners, like they take a very long time to shift in any
mhm,
direction, but they're a really good way of like creating like a learning environment and teaching you how to learn, to where
mhm,
like these boot camps are like speedboats that can zig in and out and really
mhm.
capitalize on like the new emerging trends.
Yeah, and a lot of professors or people that make content, they don't want to change what they've been teaching for the past 20 years. Like,
Hmm.
I've had professors that have taught, very old versions of Fortran. This is a couple years ago, in 2015. And, the workplace has almost no value for that. So, people, they don't adjust to trends because they don't have to, right? And as you make content, and boot camps in general, they don't get boot camp graduates or people that sign up for boot camps unless they're teaching new stuff, or things that are relevant. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
um well, I know you didn't want to answer this question, but
Let's ask.
let's get some I guess clickbaity style content, or like something that is kind of juicy for us to get
Mhm.
some clicks. What would you say are the top three most important things on creating an analytics portfolio, or four or
Okay, so
five?
first of all, determine which job you want with the skills that you have. So before you even make a portfolio, what are your skills? Do you know Tableau? Do you know Power BI? And figure out the ways to show that. If it's Tableau, have a Tableau Public. I don't know why you don't have one, you know, just public proof. It doesn't take that long to put a dashboard online.
So you're saying before you even start building,
Hmm.
do some proactive research to figure out, okay, I want this job and
Hmm.
it requires these three skills. So I
Yeah.
need to go and figure out which one of those can I build a portfolio in to
Hmm.
show that I'm going to be able to at least complete the task, if not, go above and beyond.
Oh yeah, 100%. If for the BI tool that you're using, for example, if it's pure analytics, right? If there's no such thing as like a Tableau Public for, I don't know, let's say some random BI tool, name one. Power BI. Let's say there's
Mhm.
not something that you find equivalent. Well, you can always write a blog post about using Power BI. You know,
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
like make a
That's
GIF
smart.
of your dashboard working. Or show some thing that you built. And then have a link. So someone can download the dashboard if they want. It's just make an effort to find out what you need to do and then go about doing it. The other thing you can do, especially with a portfolio, is we're always talking about like, oh yeah, Tableau Public or putting things on GitHub if you're a programmer, or if you're, use R code or Python. By the way, totally have a GitHub. That's probably the second point. If you're doing any sort of programming language, have a GitHub with your projects on it, please. Like it's nice to see that your actual code. It's one thing talking in an interview or, just in general, but having code online, so much better. And then put a README with it too. You don't need to know what a README is for this podcast necessarily, but README is basically just saying like, here's how to run the code, or here's what I'm doing with this code,
Mm-hmm.
Like what problem are you solving in theory, and God, what was the other one? Oh, so there's also non-traditional ways of having a portfolio. Some of this could be, answering Quora questions about analytics. Even there's Stack Overflow versions for analytics, like, how is this particular confidence interval working? Or answer people's questions, Having your name out there really does help. Every single day I get people being like, oh yeah, like I saw your, post on blah, 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 I also get people that say like, oh, I saw your post on, towards data science or Medium, and I thought it was really cool. Thank you so much. Are you interested in working for us? And my question usually is like, which blog post did you see? There's so many. Or I saw your answer to a question. I'm like, was it on Quora? Was it Stack Overflow? Was it something I answered on Reddit? Some people actually have gotten jobs from answering analytics questions on Reddit. No joke. So there's so many different platforms you can, contribute back that, people think better of you if they see your answer online, and you don't have to be a super expert to answer questions on, simple things, even just contributing back, you can learn and make a portfolio even better simply because that you're learning from people's comments to your work, and these are the type of comments that you might get in like an interview, for example, it's good.
Yeah. Well, what you're doing there is you're almost crowdsourcing the actual portfolio.
Exactly.
So then you're getting your assumptions tested, and you may have made some poor assumptions.
Yeah, some very poor assumptions. And the beauty is people online are more than willing to point them out,
Wait, what is that law? There's I saw this on Reddit, where the best way to get an answer is to like say something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
then you're immediately gonna have like all these people like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
But you learn so quickly, right? I've years and years ago, I sometimes I post blog posts and people are like, oh yeah, like, you could also do this to solve a problem, right? Or something else you could look at. And I think better, I know things better for my work. I know things better for future interviews. I've aced interviews simply because, my blogs have covered certain topics. I get asked, questions based on certain topics sometimes, or answer things in Quora, it's beautiful. It all comes back to you in the end,
I like how you put that.
Yeah.
So I was actually listening to a podcast, and they mentioned the concept amor fati, which is love fate. And they were talking like the broader context of that conversation was it's kind of like the serenity prayer of, I need to know what is within my sphere of influence and what is outside of my sphere of influence.
Yeah.
And I need to have the wisdom to know the two apart.
Mm-hmm.
What are the most impactful things that someone can do to kind of get themselves out there, or like build a portfolio that like really resonates?
Well, I think the biggest problem with people is, first of all, just getting out there. You don't have to have a life-changing contribution, to Tableau Public or a blog post, just try writing something and publish it, or try posting something on Tableau Public and then sharing it on Reddit or, Quora asking for feedback or some platform. Because that's the way to start growing. And the hardest thing is just to start, really.
Yeah. 0 to 1. That is the,
and then as you started your
thing.
podcast, I'm sure you kind of felt the same thing. The hardest thing was to start, right?
Yeah. Because I'm still struggling a little bit with imposter syndrome, because I've only been in this space for 3 years. Well, so I've actually had someone challenge that kind of assumption, speaking, kind of mentally. I tell people that I've had my analytics consulting agency for 3 years, but I studied analytics in my MBA for 2 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm technically 5 years into my journey.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Actually, this is a good topic for you to answer since you're kind of in that position. So this is a debate that me and Elizabeth, my podcast co-host, had. And she, speaking of getting out there, this was
Mm-hmm.
the first criticism she ever got,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of ate her up a little bit. Like
Uh-huh.
someone was like, I work at Google. If someone interviewed for us and said they have 5 years of experience and they included their education, I would just laugh them out the door. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people can be rough.
People can be rough, but you do learn from, good and bad criticism, I had a YouTube video, which I totally could share some in the comments. I mean, it was on principal component analysis. And people were like, you say okay way too much. I said okay for no contextual reason, But you know what? I've learned my LinkedIn learning course, I do not say okay 27 times, this
Right. It was
I
just a
haven't,
filler word.
yeah. But you do learn by, trial through fire in some ways, right? And you know, but you know what? That the blog post that accompanies that video has gone, 500,000 views. So,
Wow.
you know, life hurts, it's a very public shaming in some ways,
So
but
what you're saying is that it's all okay?
it's all okay because you learn and you get better, And these are things that people would point out in a more uh, dire situation, like an interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't speak well in an interview versus just some random YouTube video, you're okay, because difference between, a bad YouTube video versus a bad interview could be a job.
Yeah, I actually just went back. I just applied for Vistage, which is it's basically like a public speaking engagement where you go and you talk to a group of C-suite executives, and
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like a mastermind group. And I was trying to dig up a good video to send them um, to like show that I can speak well, and I went all the way back to my first YouTube video, and it was terrible. I was so flat. And I was pausing, but it wasn't like one of those good pregnant pauses where you're like building up the
Yeah.
anticipation. It was just like, oh, that sounds and feels weird. And it was like making my skin crawl.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, I, you have to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. You just
Exactly.
got to get
And
out there.
portfolios and like for analytics are very iterative, right? It's not like when you publish a dashboard to Tableau Public, you can't, update it or, whatnot. You can always make things better and you can always be growing, So that's the big thing, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really fantastic, actually, way to end the interview. So, do you have any plugs that you want to put out there?
A couple of them. So, I mean, the data science portfolio blog post, if you're going to ask me about, finding a job, I've tried to automate this in a lot of different ways possible about like, oh yeah, could you like teach me how to get a job in data science or analytics or whatever? Read the blog post. I spent months writing it, like no joke, complete, time suck. Uh, but also just in general, there's also this success as an iceberg image, and I'll share my screen very briefly. So I saw this on Instagram like a couple weeks back, and a lot of success is people don't see where your success comes from. It's like hard work. It's putting the time for your portfolio. People may not necessarily see that it's failing. Me saying okay 1,000 times during a YouTube video, it's so bad. I'll send it to you afterward. There's a lot of persistence. Like working hard when people don't see it, and taking risks, right, and like sacrificing. So that's kind of my major plug here today. Because everyone asks me like, oh, how do you become successful, or how do you become successful? Well, it's a lot of it you don't see. You don't see
That's
the
true.
failure. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and you also, I saw another meme that was, you don't want to compare your day 0 to someone else's day 300 or whatever, and it was like a little acorn and then this big you know,
Yeah, that's a
tree.
beautiful one, you know.
Yeah.
Just work hard, you know.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on. You've just given us so much good things to just like resonate and or just to kind of gestate on.
I really appreciate your time. This is a lot of fun. This makes my day, you know.
Oh, thanks.